Stage 4 load shedding is expected to continue until Wednesday. It kicked in from 9 o'clock this morning. Eskom says it is also waiting for electricity it imports from Mozambique to resume. The power utility says the tropical cyclone that hit Mozambique affected power supply lines. To take this story further, we're now joined in studio by the president of Transform RSA, Adil Nchabeleng. Adil, Transform SA usually has very strong opinions about this matter. What is your latest thinking?
Our latest thinking is really much of disappointment. As you recall, for the past few months, and especially throughout the last 6 months, we've been warning that there will be a crisis if Eskom does not attend to the current issues of maintenance particularly, and setting aside the necessary budget to tackle the issue of actually power supply, to make sure that the power utility is up and running and there is uninterrupted power supply.
Yeah.
The current issues right now are related primarily to the shutting down of power plants, to the aspect of the forced shutdown of other power plants as well as the systems issues. As you've seen that the current line from Mozambique is giving power issues, but those issues are very minor because a line from Mozambique is only supplying 1,200 megawatts. So it cannot be the reason for why we're having a load shedding in South Africa. It's a far much more bigger systemic issue relating to Eskom. And management is refusing to actually raise its head. The board has not spoken. The minister is nowhere to be found. We have been told by the president that he has actually instructed Praveen to go and sit at Eskom. I just came back from Eskom. The minister is not there. Eskom's whole megawatt park is actually under load shedding itself. So you're sitting with a situation whereby really no one knows what is going on and what needs to be done.
There has been concern raised previously about the fact that there are parallel task teams and a board at Eskom, and now you're bringing in the minister. Where does the buck stop?
Look, in any operation, this is an institution which is instituted around a CEO. There is a board. There is the two ministries that are actually responsible for Eskom.
Energy and public enterprises.
You have so many people in the process, 47,000 engineers, as well as workers, as well as technicians, as well as people working for Eskom, general people and suppliers. Yet nobody seems to understand what the problem seems to be. But this just shows you that management has not done its job. I mean, you have a CEO who is relatively unknown in terms of his views or perspective on Eskom's position and problems. Instead, you have ministers talking on his behalf. You have a situation whereby you have a board that is chaired by a relatively really decent human being who knows nothing about energy and has admitted that I'm not an energy expert and I know nothing in energy. So there is a huge confusion. Why is it this confusion persisting? Is there is the stubbornness in decision making. The board by now have been recused, and a new board should have been implemented. Even if it's an interim board, the CEO should have been appointed who has the capability for energy generation and comes from an energy background, particularly with an engineering background, who understand what needs to be done, because you have to dive in and actually swim currently with the current crisis in order to solve the problems. The power stations are failing. You have seen a week ago, we've seen one of the distribution substations
Minister Kodan himself
exploding.
has said that there's a problem with the aging power stations.
Of the power stations. So the aging of the power stations is due to maintenance. Power stations in most of the world get refurbished throughout the life of the power of the utility itself. So if you have a power station that reaches an aging period, you just have to refurbish it and make sure that it's continuously running. So what is not happening in South Africa is there's no maintenance. There is no actually people who understand the business of power generation, because there's a staged process. The other thing is the coal supply, the aspect of the boilers, where the water levels, including the aspect of maintaining the boiler at a level whereby it can produce steam to run its turbines. The turbines are running the generators. This is a simple, straightforward process. It's like really running a garage whereby you buy fuel, you sell it to consumers. In this case, Eskom does not have electricity to supply to consumers. The other concerning part of it is half of Eskom's capacity, which is about 47,000, is completely missing off the grid. 3 power stations have been shut down. There is other units that are not functional as we are speaking. The Duva unit has not been brought back into line. You have the Medupi crisis, which is never ending, and yet money has been spent. And nobody is speaking that actually Medupi needs to be fully functional rather than at the stage where it is, where there is resynchronization of the power plant.
How does it get fully functional when there are such such a mountain of problems, though.
It's going to be a crisis because they've spent so much of money. It's unrecoverable on the spend that they've done, but nobody has been held responsible in terms of the current mess.
Do you agree with the narrative that says it's not only operational, it's also political?
It is highly political because the people who come always in terms of being blamed becomes a political becomes political decision, and becomes political interference. At this stage, we know that the current Eskom crisis, if you're talking about Medupi Kusile, it's all related to politics. You have a COO who was actually appointed on top of a CEO, Jan Obelhotzer. Jan has been now actually been exposed in the commission of Zondo as having been involved with actually Black and Veatch in a corruption case where they allowed monies to be paid over and no value was given over to Eskom. So you have this myriad of problems that are related to humans. Remember, systems work as long as you keep them functional. Here the problem is human interference and political interference, as well as the massive level of corruption that is happening due to the big bill.
Who stands to benefit from the political interference?
Look, currently the ANC has been the biggest beneficiary relating to Eskom.
Really?
They made a lot of money out of the Eskom Medupi as well as Kusile mess. This is a fact.
But they stand to lose votes in May.
Look, whether the ANC cares at the stage to lose or win votes is an irrespective position, because at the stage that things are going, which country will vote in a political party that is grappling with a simple issue like load shedding? People are upset over the weekend for having experienced this amazing level of load shedding. So who's going to be having confidence in a political party that really does not even understand how to keep lights on?
Why, according to you, you mentioned at the beginning of our conversations that there's 2 ministries involved in this saga. Why is it that we hardly hear a word from energy?
The Department of Energy is a very interesting department. It's broken up into DGs. It's broken up into the DG. It's broken up into the minister. But the only person we hear a voice from is the minister, who is only pushing one interest, IPPs. He's not interested in the functioning of Eskom, the issues of load shedding. He's only pushing for one aspect, to say we want to sign up as many IPPs as possible. We have IPPs in the current generation, but that IPPs cannot produce electricity that can be sent into homes or factories of the country, because it is not built. All we want to do is
see the lights on.
Yeah, it's not even built to actually be integrated into our generation grid lines. So whatever Eskom is paying for that, it's a waste. 94 million rand spent every day just being dumped. They receive it at the gate and immediately discard it because it does not have the capacity to be transmitted over Eskom transmission lines.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has said that we should be sorted out in about 3 days' time and return to full capacity. But is that reassuring in terms of these things recurring?
How do you sort out when power stations are breaking down? There's about 7 power stations that are currently off in terms of units are offline, where there's no capacity to actually fix them and maintain them in time. There's planned maintenance, there is unplanned maintenance. Power stations are blowing up, there are units that are going offline. How are you going to give an assurance? Yes, you can tell us there's going to be an assurance, which means the country is going to spend 4 or 5 times or 6 times the amount on running backup generators in order to produce the current load demand that is currently not available in the system, which means they are going to be burning a lot of diesel instead of focusing on coal generation, which is the bedrock of Eskom's power generation. So when the president is advised, the advisors ill-advise him extremely, because the president is not an energy generator or an energy expert. He does not know what happens in the generation point of it. But the people advising him are the ones who are actually putting him into the darkness, because they are not telling him the fundamentals. They are not showing him the real issues around energy generation. So he's highly misadvised.
We need to wrap up this conversation. What's the solution?
Look, the solution is go back to fundamentals. Eskom's job is to produce electricity. How do you produce it? Make sure that your generation capacity is running at its best capacity. You are making sure that you're building brand new power stations. We have been emphasizing, as Transformer to say that we need lots of base load.
Power stations.
You have to. How are you going to grow the economy when there is no...
Isn't that what Medupi and Kusile are doing, though?
That is the biggest mess they've done over 10 years. The brand new power stations are built within 5 years. We're going to have to leave the conversation,
but Adil, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Always value your inputs. Adil Nchabeleng is the president of Transform SABC.